What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Big Five Pod, episode number 147. And a long time no see because we just recorded an episode a couple days ago, but we are back again for some more off-season, the start of the off-season news and some things that have been happening so far, some house cleaning, if you will, housekeeping. So we're back. I'm your co-host Kyle Morello. Next to me is co-host Jake Copestick. Cope, I know how you're doing because I talked to you a couple days ago, but how have you been since we last talked on Tuesday night?
Good. Nap season, sleeping, trying to catch up. I said this to my dad the other day. If you took like the entirety of the basketball season and we're like, all right, like if you were supposed to get 8 hours of sleep a night and just say like, the first night, just say I got like seven, and it's like, all right, you're already -1. I need a lot of catching up. So I'm taking care of that. The problem with that is, Kyle, is that, we usually record like 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. Tonight's, about 20 after 9, which is fine. Gives us time after work, get settled, take care of things, get something to eat, maybe take a nap like I did today. But it's gonna take me a while to catch up. And when we're busy with transfer portal season now, that even though this is only a couple week window, comes at you fast. Bullets are flying, there's a lot happening. We're kept on our toes with returners. And I mean, we have some freshman news we're going to talk about today. Like, truly, Kyle, there just is not an off season,
No.
which I mean makes it fun. There's no FOMO of like not going to a game, missing out on something, but there's plenty to keep us on our toes. There's always plenty to discuss. We'll obviously be transfer portal heavy with what has happened because really, Kyle, from the last time we recorded to now, there's been a lot. So for the most part, I think until we maybe get to like July and you're really in the dog days, we're probably not going to have a shortage of things to talk about.
No. No. And like I said last episode, we'll obviously this episode we'll talk about transfer portal, we'll talk about some coaching hires. Both of those cycles are going to continue for the next few weeks, if not a couple months. And then, like you said, once we get into June or July, then we're going to start to feel it. But we'll have some interviews. We'll talk amongst ourselves as well, and we'll fill in the gaps until it comes, October again. We get time to start talking about the upcoming season, but that's 6 months from now, so we've got some time, Cope. But anyway, let's get right into it. We actually, we haven't really done this kind of housekeeping in about a month or so since we last talked with all the Big Five teams when they were conference tournaments. So why don't we start off with Cope's quick hitters, which you didn't even have last episode because we were very tournament heavy. Obviously, we knew we were going to talk about this time. There's a lot more stuff. So, Cope, grab that ball, run that break. What do you got?
Yeah, really, it's a ton, Kyle. I'm not going to try to, I'll make it concise, but really there's a whole lot to go over. So we'll split it up. I want to talk about Dan Leibovitz being the A10 commissioner first. Couple scheduling notes, couple recruiting notes. That totally gets, I mean, swept under the rug in tournament time and coaching and transfer portal. You don't even get time to talk about freshmen. We will discuss that. And then to Kyle, I thought it was important. I know I touched on this the last episode. I thought it was important. Let's take a lay of the land here. Big Five adjacent coaching hires. We'll talk about the new hires in each of the conferences that a Big Five team represents, just so we can get familiar. We can kind of figure out what's going on here, get familiar with these new guys. I mean, November is a long time away, but I just thought that was important. No, we did it last year. I think we did it the year before as well to talk about. So yeah, we're going to cover a whole bunch of ground here before we get into transfers. All the news and notes that obviously are not top of mind is when the tournament is going on. We're going to try to touch on here. Kyle first, a new Atlantic 10 commissioner. This was announced, I think, just before, maybe the week before the Atlantic 10 tournament, I want to say, because I know Dan Leibovitz was in Pittsburgh for the tournament. He is going to take over for Bernadette McGlade as the A10 commissioner. I believe that's going to take into effect this month, I think, or at the end of the term, end of school year type thing. May 4th, actually, Kyle. May the 4th be with you. Monday, May the 4th will be Dan Leibovitz's first day.
May the
But
fourth be with
really
you.
a unique guy, Kyle, that, has a Big Five back. This is not only a guy who's been a basketball administrator coming over from the Big East, in the SEC, in the American Conference, but this is a basketball coach as well. I think it's an awesome, awesome hire, of course, with his track record, his experience. But in a basketball league, Kyle, this is a basketball guy. Head coach at Hartford for 4 years, fourth youngest D1 coach at the time when he took over. And of course, 10 years as an assistant coach under the great John Chaney at Temple University, Kyle. So a guy that is really unique with his experience as a basketball coach in the Big Five, where he also was at Penn as well, and then he assisted for the Charlotte Hornets. Like basketball background professionally, collegiately in the Big Five in the city of Philadelphia, and a basketball administrator in some really big leagues. A total knock it out of the park hire, in my opinion, for the Atlantic 10 with a guy like Dan Leibovitz, a basketball guy in a basketball league. So he'll be taking over for Bernadette McGlade in a little less than a month at the time of this recording, Kyle. But yeah, how about that? We have an A10 commissioner here, Kyle, that legitimately has a very strong Big Five background and is a former coach himself. So I think the perspectives he can bring are going to be really great, having been in the business. And although the business is a lot different than when he was a coach, he's really had a front row seat as an administrator in some big time leagues the last couple of years in the evolution of college athletics and college basketball. So yeah, really, really awesome hire, I think, for the Atlantic 10 and a guy that legitimately is Big Five roots. We'll see if we can. I'm sure he's going to be a busy guy the next couple of months. Would love to see if we can get Dan Leibovitz on in the summer,
Okay.
Kyle. Let's talk some scheduling news, Kyle. First, let's talk Ivy Madness. Let's talk Ivy Madness. Of course, you have the Palestra is going to hit 100 years on the turn of the new year. January 1st, 2027 is going to be the Palestra's 100th birthday. It's going to hit the century mark, Kyle. It's quite the accomplishment for the Cathedral of college basketball. But they're going to host Ivy Madness this year. That's switched up. This is going to be the last cycle. So the Ivy League did all eight schools were going to host Ivy Madness. Dartmouth was going to be the last in that cycle. Now, pointless to me to even have it there because small likelihood, first of all, that Dartmouth appears in Ivy Madness. They've only done it once, and that was not this past season, the season before that they appeared in Ivy Madness, and they lost in the first round. I believe that was to Yale. But it's kind of hard. They have one of the smaller, I believe the smallest arena in the Ivy League. And it's just, Kyle, that's a really tough ask to have to ask people to drive all the way up to Hanover. If Penn's in there, they got to drive 7 hours. That's the longest trip you can take in the Ivy League is from
I
Penn to
mean,
Dartmouth.
people drove up to Ithaca this year.
Ithaca's 4 hours away, Kyle. And if you've ever been, it's beautiful.
I've never been. I'd like to
Oh, it's
go.
gorgeous, man.
But
Went
I
up
mean,
there.
listen, like the entire Ivy League's, I mean, it's not so spread out once you get up to New England, but you know, at some points you're going to ask people from Massachusetts and New Hampshire to drive down to Pennsylvania. I mean, it's not easy. You know what I mean? Rhode Island to Pennsylvania is not, it's a 4 or 5 hours. I mean, it's not like, up to Dartmouth, but still.
Yeah. Also, telling people to come to Philadelphia, come to the Palestra, I think
No,
is a
it's
way
of
better
course.
ask to
Of
go
course.
to Hanover, New Hampshire, where it's probably still frigid in March. Not to say it's really not the same here, but you get to go to Philadelphia, you get to go to the Palestra. I think that these people also, Kyle, remember they have a lot of them are doing very well for
Well,
themselves. They could
they're an Ivy
afford to
League
come
school.
down
Yeah.
to Philly for a weekend. But the Palestra is going to host. They're going to break the cycle. Dartmouth was gracious enough to give it up. And for the 100th anniversary, Kyle, of the Palestra, they're going to host Ivy Madness. So how cool is that, Kyle? We are going to have a conference tournament in Philly next year.
And I'm sure we'll
So
be there.
absolutely,
At least
absolutely,
one of
and
us, if not
I
both.
think Penn is a great shot to be there as well. So Penn hosted the first two Ivy Madness tournaments in 2017 and 2020, in 2018. Then they went into the cycle here. That cycle ends. It's going to go back to the Palestra with Dartmouth giving it up. And Kyle, this is the perfect place for me. I think, not to kind of go off on a tangent here, but I saw people asking for, because Dan Leibovitz had said, like, hey, we really kind of want to have one city, where we're having the A10 tournament because, this year it's in Pittsburgh. 50th now, I think that was a 50th anniversary celebration thing because the league started in Pittsburgh. The year prior was in Washington, D.C. The year prior was in Brooklyn, where the A10 tournament will be next year. But I think to kind of have one central location that you can look forward to, go and there's obviously a ton to do in New York and D.C. But, I think it'd be tough for the A10 to do it at the Palestra. As much as I love the Palestra, there's 4 locker rooms there.
It's a little small.
And I just think to have a 5-day tournament, that might be a little much for the Palestra to hold with that many fan bases and the logistics of having that many teams there in one day. However, Kyle, this is the perfect place to have the Ivy League tournament, regardless if it's Penn's home court, the Palestra is the perfect place to have Ivy Madness. A 2-day event, 2 games, one day, one game the next. The Palestra is a perfect place to do it. So really, really excited for this, that we're going to have a conference tournament in Philadelphia next year. We're going to be able to attend and potentially see a Big Five team there. And then in the future, Kyle, the plans are kind of up in the air. This was going to be the last year of the cycling between all the Ivy teams, and then they were going to see what they were going to do in the future. Those plans are not decided yet, might not be decided until after this tournament happens. Discussions are happening. There's nothing set as of right now. Kind of eager to see what they decide to do, but I think the Palestra is the perfect place to do it. Of course, Kyle, an extremely, extremely biased answer coming from me, but you want history, the perfect size, I think, the little over 8,000 that they hold, I think is really the perfect size for an Ivy League tournament. Again, I think you get a bunch of fan bases to come down to Philadelphia for a weekend. I think it's the perfect spot for it. But excited that they decided to do that in celebration, of course, of the 100th year anniversary of the Palestra. Next, Kyle, how about an A10 American scheduling alliance that was announced by Bernadette McGlade shortly before, obviously her tenure's up, but they announced it during the season here. So, unfortunately, it's probably not what we wanted because there's not going to be as many teams. It's just going to start with neutral site doubleheader. You're going to have Dayton. You're going to have the top dogs basically. Okay, you're basically going to have the top dogs going at each other. This really isn't going to benefit a St. Joe's or a LaSalle. Probably not going to really benefit Temple either. But there's going to be some matchups here. It's going to be a neutral site doubleheader November the 29th. You're going to have St. Louis and South Florida. You're going to have Dayton play Memphis. I'm sure they're going to sneak VCU a game in there as well. So ideally, it expands to more after 2027 and 2028. It's good. It's a multi-year agreement that's going to at least go to that point. I think this is great for both sides that they should do this. But for right now, we're just getting the top dogs playing each other, and hopefully this, rolls over to more teams in the year. But I think that's progress. I think that's progress that logically, I think it makes sense. You're going to have some teams with bigger budgets that can fly south, go to a neutral site. It's a neutral site game against a good team that'll boost your resume. I think that works out for everybody. So more to come on that, and hopefully we see a St. Joe's or South Temple get involved. But Dayton, Memphis, St. Louis, USF, coming later this year on November the 29th at a neutral site. And nationally televised games as well. We're going to be on ESPN. Hopefully we see more of that in the future. A start for now, even if it doesn't involve any Big Five teams. Let's talk recruiting, Kyle. I don't even remember when the last time was we decided to talk about this, but 3 commitments to go over. The first for Villanova, by the way. 2026 4-star guard Adam Umidouche, Kyle, who plays an overtime elite for the Cold Hearts. He's a 4-star guard, a 6'5" guard from Arlington, Virginia. So this was a recent commitment because he was committed to St. John's. He decommits, and Villanova scoops him right up. They had interest in him, and he had made, his final 6 to 8 teams, whatever. Villanova was in that. He just decided to go with St. John's, but he decommits. Nova scoops him up, and they have their first recruit in the class of 2026. I'm not a fan of overtime elite, Kyle. I'll just go out and say it. I know we got some success stories, of course, with the Thompson brothers. I mean, you have Bryson Tiller, who just crushed it at Kansas this year and is going to get himself paid. He played in overtime. But regardless, I mean, the stats don't lie, Kyle. Regular season in 2025, 26, regular season overtime elite. This guy averaged over 28 points a game and shot almost 39% from the three-point line. Pretty good. Averaged well over 20 points a game in playoff time as well in OTE. This is a 2-guard. I mean, he's skinny. He'll put some weight on. I have no doubt he'll do that at Villanova. Hopefully he stays and you're able to see that, which is another story, and we'll get into that. But yeah, it's really crafty scorer at the 2-guard spot. Nice size of the position. He's a bench guy to start, Kyle, potentially. I don't think we're going to see him start as a young guy because I think Mr. Willard is going to probably pay a pretty penny for a really good shooting guard to come in and start right away with some experience. But hey, if you got a bit of a microwave scorer on here, look, you'll live with the lumps as a freshman, but this dude could put the ball in a basket, Kyle. Can put the ball in a basket, did it at a really high rate. in overtime and lead. So yeah, bit of a I know you can look at. I thought it was Umadoc, and then I listened to an interview with Adam Finkelstein. It's Adam Umidouche, Kyle. Adam Umidouche.
Madouche.
Umidouche.
I'm
Let's
going to
get it
mess
right.
that up next year.
I think he just has AO or Adam O in the back of his jersey. Maybe they can broker out a deal. He can do that at Villanova because that's probably what we're going to be referring to him as. But yes, Kyle. Adam Umidouche, first commitment in the class of 2026 for the Villanova Wildcats. Kyle, let's go to the another school. We'll go to the other school in the Holy War. St. Joe's, their second commitment in the class of 2026. That would be three-star forward Davis Kemper. He's a 6'8 lefty shooter. He's coming off of a prep year at Athletes in Action Academy in Ohio. He's originally from a place, Kyle, that you used to live, that you resided in for a little bit, and that would be Grand Rapids, Michigan.
That's right. Shout out GR.
Yeah. So we got a Grand Rapids,
616.
Michigan guy here. So he's going to join, of course, BJ Ranson, the son of associate head coach Bino Ranson in the class of 2026. They now have two commitments there. And how about this for a fun fact, Kyle? His father, Hunter Kemper, was a four-time Olympian triathlete, and his mother was nearly an Olympian as well. She was cut from the U.S. women's volleyball team, but that's how they met. Was on, they were at an Olympics together, at a training session together. But yeah, the son of essentially two Olympians, Kyle. Guy's
Olympic
got some
blood coming to Hawk
athleticism in
Hill.
his blood. Yeah.
How about
How
that?
about that? But three-star, 6'8 lefty shooter. Seems like a Steve Donahue guy to me, Kyle. But that gives us two freshmen on Hawk Hill. I think there's certainly room for a third. There's plenty of transfers that we'll get into. There's plenty of room for some transfers here. But I think maybe you could sneak in another freshman or two. But yeah, three-star forward Davis Kemper, Grand Rapids, Michigan, coming to Hawk Hill next year. Kyle, our last one, and it's the sixth commitment for the Penn Quakers in the class of 2026. That would be Johnny Keenan from Rye, New York. He played high school at Iona Prep, and then he did a post-grad year at St. Thomas More up in Connecticut for Jerry Quinn. If you know anything about St. Thomas More, Kyle, I mean, just a tremendous, tremendous post-grad program. London Jemison, who's at Alabama right now, he came from there. Andre Drummond's got a banner in that gym. He went there, as a Connecticut Player of the Year. So yeah, really, really good post grad academy up in New York, or excuse me, in Connecticut. He's coming from there. 6-foot guard, had offers from Fordham in Manhattan. He's a smaller point guard, but man, some speed and some shooting as well. A guy that's, I guess, physically comparable to an AJ Levine. Not quite as athletic, but a better shooter. And Kyle, that gives us six, which is going to be key because when we talk about Penn and the guys that are transferring out, I think that's partly responsible to how big of a class they have coming in this year. So he's going to join Isaiah Carroll. He's going to join Mike Pereira. He's going to join Finley Billy, Chase Jeremiah, and Ethan Lynn from New Jersey. Now a 6-man freshman class for the Quakers. So that gives us Johnny Keenan, Finley Billy. I think a Chase Jeremiah could even be an Irish name, Kyle. Probably pretty easy to do that when your head coach's last name is McCaffrey.
Yeah.
Hopefully there's a lineup where they're all out there. We could call them the Irishman. But yeah. All right, Kyle. Some Big Five adjacent coaching changes. We're going to start in the American Conference. We're going to go alphabetical order here, or at least I tried. I mean, there's only 5 conferences to go over. I hope I was able to put them in alphabetical order. If not, I'm going to have to figure something
That's
out
fine.
here. First, Kyle, so there's only 2 to speak of in the American Conference. We're almost about a year on that now, so we're going to make sure we have that down. Kyle, the first is at Charlotte. Out is Aaron Fern, and in is Wes Miller, a North Carolina native from Greensboro, let go at Cincinnati after 5 seasons there, 3 of which were in the Big 12, and 2 of which he was in the American. However, Kyle, he just didn't make a tournament appearance there in 5 years. And it's tough because he takes over that job and they're in the American, and he has expectations of a coach in the American. And then he hops right into the Big 12, Kyle. At the same time they had BYU, at the same time they had UCF, who's at least been to the tournament, and at the same time they had Houston. Already a super tough conference as it is. A super tough conference, adding Arizona. Like there is this was an absolute gauntlet Armageddon conference this year. Good teams left and right, tough teams left and right. So many teams made the tournament. I thought he got look, not that he got the short end of the stick, he got to coach in the best league in the country, but just kind of hard to have to make the jump from the American to the Big 12, which Kelvin Sampson indirectly called the Toy Poodle League his second year at Houston. So he gets let go there. No tournament appearances in 5 years. His best year, they were 23-13, his second year there before they made the jump to the Big 12. But look, the guy's got 15 years of head coaching experience. He's from North Carolina. I think this is the perfect spot for him, Kyle. They actually have some money at Charlotte. Maybe it's not a giant donor base, but they do have some big fish and they do have people that give a lot of money. So he's at a place where there is a good chunk of change. Maybe there's no tradition and stuff like that, but he's back in his home state. It's a good landing spot for him that if he does well here, he'll be able to propel himself to another head coaching job in a big league sometime soon. And Kyle, who do he hire as an assistant coach? Marcus Page. Marcus Page, who comes over
UNC
from
legend.
UNC's staff. Yeah, I mean, had essentially the Jermaine Kearse catch of college basketball shots, of course, hitting that wild one-legged double clutch three, tie up the national championship game in 2016 versus Villanova, where he was upstaged by the greatest shot in the history of March Madness.
Yep.
Of course, that goes without saying.
Yep.
We'll move on, Kyle. A little jealous at this one, and I'm going to tell you why in a second. At USF, we had a chain reaction. A chain reaction at USF and Providence set off three coaches that we're going to talk about here that are all Big Five adjacent. Kyle, at South Florida, it's Chris Mack taking over for Brian Hodgson, who departed for Providence College after just 1 year with the Bulls. Mack was at Charleston for 2 years. He went 45-20 over the 2 seasons there. It was 27-9 in CAA play. Did not make the tournament, though, unfortunately. And this past season, they run into Towson and just got absolutely steamrolled by a hot Towson team in the quarterfinals. But the record was there. They're a really good team in CAA play, as they should. This is the best, if not, it's the second best job behind UNC Wilmington in this league. So, Chris Mack gets to move up conference, gets more money. It's a great spot. It's a great program that has been left in a great spot by, of course, Brian Hodgson, but Amir Abdur-Rahim as well. And Kyle, I'll tell you why I'm jealous of this hire is because as we sit here in Pennsylvania and it's the second week of April and it's not warm and it's not 70 degrees every day, and I hate the weather here right now, this man just got to move from Charleston to Tampa. I'm jealous.
Pretty good.
Pretty good, Kyle. You could be
Pretty good.
doing worse. You could be doing worse. I am guaranteeing you that. Move on to the Atlantic 10, Kyle. Maybe a bit of an outside the box one here, but there's a whole bunch of stuff to kind of go over here with this job. And that would be at St. Bonaventure. Out is Mark Schmidt, who I know we're all big fans of. But in comes Mike McDonald from Division II Damon University, that's also in Western New York. He is a St. Bonaventure alum, and he is going to be taking over he will be the 20th head coach of the Bonnies. So he's a grad of 1988. So he's a Bonnies guy. I think that's at such a small university where it's tiny. There's not a lot of students there currently. It's just a small school. There's not a whole lot of living alumni there as well. You need somebody who's got a connection there.
Yeah.
And it's Mike McDonald that's going to take over. The last 2 seasons, Kyle, at Damon, 61-3. Went undefeated in conference play at 32-0 during that time. It's pretty good. Pretty good
I'd
for
say
Mike
so.
McDonald. So took Damon to a D2 Elite Eight this past season, back-to-back conference championships. I think he's got a couple guys that you could see at the D1 level this year. But last 3 years, he's won almost 89% of his games, 18-3 against the D2 tournament teams. Clearly, this guy can coach a little bit. And he's done it at every level. He was a coach at Canisius. He was a coach at the D3 level. He was the coach here at Damon. He's the only coach in college basketball history, Kyle, ready for this, to log 100 or more wins at every NCAA level. He's done it everywhere. But it's interesting here, Kyle, because they're actually slashing the coaching salary. Mark Schmidt was making over $1 million. That's going to get cut almost by more than half because they're one of the lowest spenders in the A10, and they're going to slash the coaching salary to give to rev share. and allocate more money to pay for the roster. So a bit of an interesting hire because we're taking a D2 guy. Of course, he's an alum, but we're going to cut his salary because we need to give more money to the team.
It's
So
it's a
interest,
risky one.
yeah, it's a risky one, but it's very interesting from a lot of different viewpoints of just maybe like the uniqueness of the school. It's small. There's not a lot of donors. There's not many. I mean, Kyle, how many emails do you get from Temple? That's like this is one of if not the largest like living alumni network. Not the same at St. Bonaventure. So it's an interesting job. They got one of their own back, but for a lot of a variety of different ways, Kyle. I think it's real interesting to just kind of see how this one plays out. Kyle, we're gonna move on to the Atlantic 10 here. We got three to or Jesus Christ. We're gonna move on to the Big East. We're gonna move on to the Big East.
I'll
Sorry, I
say
was
we
staring
were
at
just talking
Atlantic
about St.
10 as I'm
Bonaventure
scrolling
here.
down on my I'm on my sheet here. Yeah, it's been a long day. Maybe I should have napped a little longer. So this time last year, Kyle, we talked about Alan Huss leaving High Point after making the NCAA tournament there to go back to Creighton, where he played, where he used to be an assistant for Greg McDermott, and he was going to be there he was going to take over the associate head coach job and be the head coach in waiting to take over for whenever Greg McDermott retired. Now, at the time, I think this felt like this could be a 2 or 3 year thing, but Creighton didn't have a good year this past year. They didn't have a good year this past year. They lost in the college basketball crown to, I believe that was Ross Hodge in West Virginia. And Coach Mack hung him up. He hung him up. So Alan Huss will officially be taken over for Greg McDermott. So there's a coaching change there. We knew it was coming. It was just a matter of when.
Yeah.
And I think this is certainly earlier. I thought Greg McDermott would stick it out for at least 2 years. But after a not so great season, I know they have a handful of guys in the portal. And just with the way the college hoops is going, that we'll talk about, Kyle. I mean, this stuff is out of control. And if I could go sit on a beach somewhere, or if I had a son that was Doug McDermott, and I could just hang out and go watch him play, I think I would do that, Kyle. I think I would do that.
Play some
So
golf.
yeah, happy
Yeah.
trails to one of the good guys, Kyle. One of the good guys in the coaching industry. Happy trails to Greg McDermott. If you want to golf, hit the beach. I wish you success and a lot of fun, whatever you decide to do. Kyle, let's go to Butler now. Ronald Norred taking over for the retired Thad Matta. Another guy just kind of like Mike McDonald here, an alum. An alum. They're going to have to go with an alum here. I think they need to rally booster money big time. And, Butler has consistently been one of the lowest spenders in this league. And it shows. I think Thad Matta is a heck of a basketball coach, but I think he was a heck of a basketball coach in the era where you could keep people, where he made a national championship at Ohio State. But Ronald Norred is going to take over here. 36 years old, been assistant with the Atlanta Hawks the last 3 years. But this is a guy that played under Brad Stevens from 2008 to 2012. Of course, was on those two teams that made the back-to-back national championships of Gordon Hayward and Shelvin Mack and Matt Howard. It's a former Horizon League Defensive Player of the Year twice. But bottom line is this guy's an alum. He brings some NBA experience. I think this is a hire that you have to make, Kyle. If you want to rally booster money, that is also important. That really is the end-all be-all in this day and age. You need to hire one of your own that people know. And the national championship banners and the great success that this program has had that helped them propel to a year in the A10, that helped the team that was in the Horizon League now be a Big East program. You got to get one of those guys that's responsible for all that to come back and rally some booster money. So Ronald Norred taking over at Butler for Thad Matta. And then next, Kyle, should start playing the Jaws theme song as I announce this one. Brian Hodgson taking over the head coaching job at Providence. Shark-infested waters, a.k.a. the Great White Shark, taking over Providence College for Kim English, who, frankly, I mean, really, they were a disaster this past season. Kyle, this is not a rising star in the coaching industry. This is a star. This is a star. Even if he's only been a head coach for a handful of years, had a stint at Arkansas State, had a 1 year stint at South Florida last year. I don't know if he owned a winter jacket, but he better buy one moving from Tampa Bay to Providence. But man, I mean, you can't say enough good things about this guy, Kyle. He is the real deal. This is, probably one of the premier. I mean, it seemed like every head coaching opportunity that was big time, it was Brian Hodgson and Josh Schertz that were getting named for it. I mean, this guy's been a head coach for 3 years. The two at Arkansas State, one at South Florida. made the tournament at South Florida, his first ever tournament as a head coach. He was an assistant at Alabama. He's from upstate New York, so he's a Northeast guy here. But Kyle, he's never not had a 20-win season. First year at Arkansas State, 20 wins, 25 wins at Arkansas State the second year, 25-9 regular season and tournament champs of the American last season. This is a star, and he's going to be armed with a whole lot of cash from the very passionate Providence Friar fan base up there. So they landed Miles Bird today. I know we got Ryan Mila to stay. Providence is a really good job with a really passionate fan base, Kyle, of course, in a great, basketball rich tradition league. This guy could be here a while. This guy, I mean, this is a good job to take for a guy like that. He's a star in this industry and with a lot of NIL money and a young guy who will play the game with an edge to him. I think this is an A+, absolutely slam dunk hire. Look, not a lot of coaching experience. They made that mistake when they hired him English because he didn't have a lot himself. But man, I think this guy's a superstar, Kyle. I think he's an absolute superstar. A lot of money. They got, Miles Bird was not cheap. I'm sure it was not cheap to keep Brian Mila. They're going to be vying for a tournament in year one, I'm telling you. So, Kyle, we'll move on to the CAA here. Here's a guy I'm happy for. Not really so much jealous of Chris Mack going from Charleston to Tampa, but I'm happy because at Charleston, taking over for Chris Mack is John Gross, who's coming over from Akron. Get your Tommy Bahama stuff, man. Don't have to worry about living in Akron where it's freaking freezing cold and,
Hey.
It's the middle of Ohio. No disrespect. But John Gross, Kyle, an accomplished coach in his own right, now go into a league in the CAA where I should have looked this up beforehand to see where the CAA kind of in the MAC stack up. But really, really good tenure at Akron, making, if it wasn't for COVID, he would have made another tournament. 3 straight tournament appearances, Kyle, for the Akron Zips. And if you include 2020 where they would have made it, he's been to 5 of them. Been to 5 of them at Akron. Made a tournament at Illinois as well. And prior to that was the head coach at Ohio where he made 2 tournaments there as well. So this guy, the last 2 years, Kyle, 29-6, 28-7 overall. In MAC play, Kyle, this dude is 34-2 the last 2 years. Got a draft pick in Enrique Freeman by the Pacers. This dude has really, really done a good job. Ranked 71 in Ken Palm this year. They had a great season with a 2-bid MAC, Kyle. So happy for John Gross that he gets to move to Charleston, but this is a guy that's been successful at, 2 different stops in the MAC at the mid-major level, and to go to Charleston, a nice place where people want to be, and to have the NIL money that they do, I think it's a really, really good hire. Really, really good hire.
Hope
the Cougars.
Sorry to interrupt, but the CAA and MAC are right next to each other. 16th for the CAA, 17th for the MAC this year in Ken Palm conference ratings.
Okay. Yeah, and I don't know what their money situation is like. Akron's got football. You don't have it at Charleston. You get to live in a nice area, place people want to be. You have an NIL budget that's at the top of the league. It will allow you to be successful, which clearly he's shown he can do. So good for again, not too bad to move to Charleston, because that's the thing. People on Twitter were like, "This is a lateral move," and it's like it's not a lateral move if you've been to Charleston and you've been to Akron, Ohio. It is not. I promise you, it is not a lateral move. Kyle, the last one here we'll touch on in the CAA, and then one from the Ivy League. Not a good one here. Not a good one just for what's going on, and that would be John Andrzejek is leaving Campbell to take the associate head coach job at Louisville. And Kyle, this comes after just one season of John Andrzejek, who left, was an assistant coach on that Florida team that won the national championship. He takes over at Campbell. They make the CAA semifinals of the CAA tournament for the first time ever in the history of the program, and he bolts after 1 year. And I want to pull up the tweet that he had, because it was really, really concerning to look at what he had commented on Twitter about the situation. Basically just said, I don't have the resources to win. There's no commitment to win here. I can't do it. So In quotes, over the last 6 months, it has become clear that Campbell has made the decision to shift their commitment from basketball. Simply put, the institution now has different priorities, and they are not compatible with putting the kind of team on the floor that you deserve. As difficult as this is, I respect the decision and understand it is as one that the university feels it must make, in which are unprecedented times in higher education. They just couldn't work anything out money wise, but really concerning to see Kyle. I thought there was some momentum here. He had a great season, having to throw a team together, make the CAA semis. And for him to bolt, like I thought there was some momentum. I thought he was onto something here. So John Andrzejek leaves, and it will be Division II coach Jimmy Williams taking over Kyle. So we have, I believe that was a hire today or yesterday here. But yes, Jimmy Williams takes over. Look, this is a tough job here. But he's coming. He's moving one state up. He's moving up to Bowie's Creek, North Carolina, from Anderson, South Carolina, where he was the head coach at Anderson in Division II. They were one seed in the D2 tournament this year. So he comes with a track record from the D2 level, but really concerning just to see Kyle that literally the head coach, a week or two ago said, I don't have the commitment to win here. I'm not going to stay here. It's a tough gig because I think they're another school that's kind of stuck between like, do we want to try to go single A in football? It's tricky with some of these D1 AA schools. But yeah, really concerning stuff out of Campbell, man.
Cool.
Really, really concerning stuff out of Campbell.
Very, very concerning stuff. We can get more into kind of where the sport is later. But some breaking, although not breaking because this broke at about 50 something minutes ago, but I just saw it on the Twitter feed. Uh, Westchester Knicks guard Pate Pate has committed to PC, Providence College. Second commitment of the day for Brian Hodgson after he got Miles Bird, as we talked about, but 16 points a game in the G League for the Westchester Knicks. I love the two-way signing that they made with him in the offseason. 19 years old, didn't accept any 10 days or two-way contracts or anything like that, or 10-day contracts, that is, to sign with an NBA team because he wanted to maintain his eligibility, and here we go.
Yeah,
That's
I don't like this, man.
I don't like it either, but if that's not the first one, and it won't be the last, and Brian Hodgson landed himself a bucket.
No, I mean, good for him. Good for him. I
But
mean, you should
I
be
don't
able
like
to.
it.
No, I mean,
Knicks bias aside, I don't like it for the sport of college basketball.
no. He had chances. He had opportunities to play in college, and he said no to go to the G League. He made that decision. He didn't have to. Anyway,
Yeah,
I swear, Kyle, I'm almost done. I got one more to talk about. That would
I
be the Ivy League.
yeah,
One more, I swear. I
I
swear.
know.
I know I've been yapping it up over here. I swear.
We're gonna have
I'll
to
never
change the
change.
name of this segment, Cope. This is not quick.
No. It wasn't quick. It wasn't intended to be because we had a zillion news and notes to go over from,
I know. I'm
2 months of
busting your
making
balls.
brackets and watching hoops. Last one, swear. Brett McConnell taking over at Dartmouth for Dave McLaughlin, who was relieved of his duties with the Big Green up in Hanover. McLaughlin, an Ivy League guy. He was an assistant long time at Princeton, where he was a big help in recruiting that team, helped recruit Tosan Uwoma. Of course, Caden Pierce and some of those guys is a big pillar in recruiting those guys to go to Princeton and put together a Sweet 16 team. He was an assistant coach at Stanford this past year under Kyle Smith. He's coming back to the Northeast, back to the Ivy League, taking over at Dartmouth. I think it's an excellent hire, a young guy with Ivy League experience. But Kyle, good luck, in the era of money and having to pay people, whether we like it or not. I mean, these Ivy Leaguers are getting paid. We just don't know how much. Good luck with the money situation at the school in the Ivy League, Kyle, that is in the middle of nowhere. At Penn, you can recruit locally with Philly. You can do that at Harvard with Boston. Heck, you can do that. There's a couple Connecticut kids on Yale's roster. You can't do that at Dartmouth. Good luck at the place where geographically it's the most challenging in the Ivy League. You have the least money, the least history, the worst facilities. There's a lot going against Dartmouth, but Brett McConnell saw enough in it to take it over. So interesting to see how this goes. But yeah, with that, Kyle, I'm done.
Listen,
Let's talk transfers.
You better hope Dartmouth fans aren't listening on this episode.
Do
At the
they have
beginning of the
any?
quick hitters, I don't know.
No
Dartmouth
disrespect.
grads,
Look,
Dartmouth
when
alum.
I was at Penn, we lost to them at home to 1 year, but we went up there on a Friday night and won in double overtime. All I
This is
heard was
football,
up.
by the way, folks.
Got to beat them. Got to beat them. Went in on a Friday night, won in like double overtime. Got home at 5:30 in the morning. Beautiful up there though, beautiful. But factually, Kyle, it is the hardest job in the IB. Anyway,
I know, no,
suck
I'm not
transfers.
saying it's not. I'm just saying between that and when we were starting this segment, half an hour ago, Dartmouth. Dartmouth's got some work cut out for them. Their fans might not like
Yeah,
to hear some of this, but I don't know if they're listening to this anyway, so that's okay.
yeah. I mean, they
Um,
caught some strays. Like I guess I apologize, but
Connor Smith, if you see this and you retweet this, which is perfectly fine in our book, and Dartmouth fans come your way, well, that's Cope's fault. I'm just playing.
yeah,
Shout out to Connor Smith though. He's as we had him on right before the
yeah.
tournament. He's the man.
He had a great
Um,
month, man.
he had an incredible month. Senior year of college at the university at Penn, where they break an 8-year drought. He covers an Ivy League tournament that was incredible. He didn't go to the NCAA tournament game, but obviously writing articles for the Inquirer and whoever else. So, um, shout out to Connor Smith. He's the man.
Oh yeah.
Cope. Let's talk transfers. We are going to go over some transfers right now of players in and out of Big Five schools. And as we do this, we are going to give a shout out to our good friend Matt Dunn, who we affectionately call Intern. It's a nickname from when he was growing up with our friend Ray Dunn, as you guys know. So shout out to Intern for providing us with a tracker of Big Five transfers and a spreadsheet. He didn't do this just for us, but he does this every year, and he uh, so kindly shared it with us so that we can and be organized in our own thoughts. So shout out to Intern for this. Cope, I'm gonna read off some names here. I'm gonna give you a chance to catch your breath. So let's uh let's see what we got. And now this isn't 100%. We're gonna list off some names that came into the portal today, kind of later in the day as we were preparing for this, so we didn't quite get them down on the sheet. But for the Sal, outgoing transfers, we have Edwin Daniel, Ashton Walker, Nas Hart, Jose Grion, and incoming, which is the only incoming transfer as of right now, Trey Moss from George Washington sat out last year. Um, excuse me, but we'll get there in a little bit. Outgoing, obviously Deuce Jones, who left the team in January. Desir Haskins, Anthony Finkley, Kevin Kearney, Steve Solano, Jaden Smith, all leaving St. Joe's for Villanova. Zion Stanford, who left the team in March. Acaden Lewis, which Cope will get into a little bit, but I was a little surprised by that. He obviously was, key contributor and um, outstanding freshman for Villanova, so surprised by that. But him, Bryce Lindsey, Braden Pierce, who had an interesting visit that we'll go over too. For Temple, you got Aiden Tobiason, Babatunde Duradola, Spencer Mahoney. For Penn, Michelangelo Berti, Christian Ubochi, and Alex Masung. For Drexel, Kavan Vanderhorst, Shane Blakeney, William Adson, Garcia Adson, Horace Simmons Jr. Cope, there's a couple more in there today. Um, I'm blanking on them right now. If you remember who they are at the very moment, I was commuting home when some of them um, broke, but I have to remember right now. This is not good. This is blanking on me. Um,
Yeah, I mean there was a handful. You had
yeah,
Jemai Felt put his name in at
yes,
Temple.
that was the one that yeah,
Yeah, I know Connor Gale put his name in as well, even though him being like the walk on here. We talk about everybody. If I see your name in the transfer portal, we're going to discuss.
yeah,
Eric Acker should be on there as well for LaSalle. He was an early entrant. I'm not going to hold it against our guy Matt here,
no,
but yeah, I mean there's a lot. There's Big Nico for. I mean he didn't play, but we can at least acknowledge his existence for
yes.
Villanova. So yeah, I mean
Maybe not everyone on
it's
Twitter agrees with that, Cope. We got some slack for for putting him
yeah.
on there. I don't know. It
I
happens.
could have worded the tweet better. I
It's
mean,
okay.
my point was that with Big Nico, Braden Pierce, and Duke Brennan gone, Villanova had to completely, like they don't have any centers left. It's going to be a brand new group of front court
Yeah.
guys. And I put in at the end of the tweet that he had redshirted and he had committed to Villanova after decommitting from Florida State. Didn't have enough characters to say that it was because Leonard Hamilton retired. And I'm not really sure why that stirred up
It got a little
a couple
misinterpreted.
burner accounts here.
That's
And they're
okay.
like, yeah, not a big loss. He didn't play. And I was like, yeah, you kind of read the tweet and you
It
connect the
happens.
dots. I think
It
you got it
happens.
there. Anyway,
Listen,
um,
we appreciate our followers for interacting. Keep us on
yeah,
our toes. We're gonna need
can't
it
hurt.
sometimes.
Can't hurt. Anyway, let's start with LaSalle here, Kyle. Couple retention pieces I'm excited about, but we'll talk about the transfers here. Like, Acker, give him credit for being the one guy that stayed. Um, but I think maybe a league under the A10 might be a level for him. If he were to go back to LIU or just were to move down, I think he'd have some more success here and maybe see some more playing time. And he made a couple starts and he got in and he scored when they asked him to, and when he was in there when there was so many injuries. But I don't really fault a guy like him for leaving. Jose Grullon, I saw in a uniform a couple times. Didn't end up playing with an injury. And then, Nashart, here's the thing about him, Kyle. Like when we had Colin Curtin on Spaces in the summer, he said, like, in this new era where everybody wants transfers, 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 LaSalle has the opportunity to get sometimes steal guys like him who get overlooked because people want older players. But then when we had Darius on, and he said, look, the thing is with freshmen, like I'm getting guys that can play year one. I want guys that can play right away. Because if they don't, they're going to leave. And that's unfortunately what happened here, is that you had Nashart play more as the season went on, but that's because they were so beat up in the front court and they didn't have Bowen Beatty and they didn't have Jerome Brewer and they didn't have Justin Archer and they didn't have Josiah Harris, sporadically. So that's why he played. He missed a couple games himself, and then with Ashton Walker, this is what it is, Kyle. This is college now. He was a really good freshman in this league who really benefited from injuries and really benefited with Jaden Johnson not playing. Not to take anything away from him, he made the most of his minutes. They were asking a lot of him, having to play the point and playing a lot of minutes as a freshman in the Atlantic 10. And he played well and he contributed really well. But he sees that. Clearly, other people saw it as well. And he wants to go get some more money. Like, that's just what it comes down to. That was a perfect freshman story. Guy that
Yeah.
Darius recruited for a long time. He brought with him to LaSalle. He played pretty well at this level, and now he wants to get himself paid a little bit. Like, that's just what it comes down to. Some of these asking numbers are absolutely astronomical, are totally crazy. And he's a guy that's going to want to get some money and is probably going to get it this offseason. He had a good year for LaSalle. I would have loved to see Ashton Walker come back.
Yeah.
Just not really, not really what happens here.
No. But LaSalle did have a couple guys come back. Bowen Beatty, like you mentioned, he will be back next year. Biggest piece is Rob Dockery. Rob Dockery will be back next year as well. He had a phenomenal end to the season in the last, I don't know, what was it, 7 to 10 games or so for the Explorers. So he'll be back. Was Jaden Johnson too? That
Yeah,
was another
Jaden
one. Yeah,
Johnson's coming back.
I didn't want to
Um,
misspeak, but yes, Jaden Johnson will be back, which is a huge piece as well. Hopefully, health this year for all of them.
Absolutely.
Knock
That's the
on
biggest
wood.
key to season.
That's yeah. So it's not all people leaving. And they also did get in Trey Moss, who was a transfer from George Washington, who did not play last year. Um,
He had
so
played at GW the year before, and
yeah.
he was at William and Mary. He had his best season. Another guy they're bringing back out. I'm excited for Noah Collier this year. You get a veteran dude, you get a big dude up front. Like if depth is going to be their thing, you'd love to see guys like that stay. And even though he was hurt last year, he give him credit. He tried to give it a go off the bad knee injury that he suffered at William and Mary. Decided to shut it down, but had enough confidence in the staff to stay. So excited for him. But I mean, the Jaden Johnson, Rob Dockery, you get your big wing here, and then you get your point guard back. I mean, that's huge. And Jaden Johnson with a full season, he really needs to improve that 3-point shot. But you saw just how much better LaSalle was as a team when he was out there, when he was running the show. The turnovers were down. He didn't turn the ball over himself and really like gave them the true natural point guard that they didn't have when he was out, that they really missed when he was out. So you have to be super, super excited for Jaden Johnson, but then also like this Rob Dockery thing, Kyle, is so big for all parties involved because Dockery redshirts at A&M. He comes here. And, of course, once he put his name in the portal, as anybody would. There's Kyle, there's almost no incentive for people to stay when the market is getting increasingly crazier every year. There's almost no incentive for you to stay when your market value will shoot up just because of, a rising tide lifting all ships here with the money going up so much every year. But for Rob Dockery to stay at LaSalle, still be in a good league, going to have the ball in his hands a ton. He can be the guy this year, still make some money, and just continue to work on his game, continue to be a shooter, continue to work with the ball in your hands a lot. You saw how often he got to the free throw line and how much he could affect the game offensively, really with some really explosive performances, especially late in the year. If he can build off that last 10 to 15 games, continue to be the guy, pick up the best defender on the other side, have the ball in his hands a lot. If you want to leave next year and get yourself paid, okay. But I think for all parties involved, for LaSalle to bring a guy like Rob Dockery back, and for Rob Dockery to stay, develop, and be given the minutes, the reps, and the opportunity to develop, this worked out for everybody. I'm very glad he took his name out. This is going to be positive for every single party involved here.
100%. 100%. Could have better said it better myself. And trying to continue the culture that Darius Nichols is trying to build at LaSalle. I think it's obviously it's not just him. It's Jaden Johnson too. It's Bowden Beatty. Um, you know, all of those guys. It's going to help a lot. Um, that's one thing when we talk to Darius, when we talk to Colin Curtin, when we've been around them, at games and whatnot and press conferences, they want to build something. They want to build a culture. They want it to be different than what it has been, and not necessarily that it was bad, but obviously they haven't been to the tournament since 2013. So, you know, that's where they want to be. They don't want to be in the basement of the Atlantic 10. So it's good for all parties involved, like you said. Cope, I want to move on now. I can't say a lot of the St. Joe's guys are really, really surprising. I mean, I guess Haskins a little bit, but he had a really good season. Obviously, we knew Deuce Jones was going to go, and then the way the season ended for Anthony Finkley, I think that's not 100% a surprise that he'd maybe want to try to go somewhere else where he started the year as a starter and was supposed to be one of the key cogs in the team, and kind of I don't want to say faded, but he ended up being put in a reserve role, and he played okay, but I think it just didn't work out this year, so he'll play his senior season elsewhere. Um, and yeah, I mean Steve Solano, Jaden Smith as well. I mean they didn't play a ton and contribute as much as probably they would have liked. So I can't say like a ton of those are surprises. I was definitely surprised moving on to a different school though. I was surprised to see Acaden Lewis's name in the transfer portal. Now he's also declaring for the NBA draft, so I think that's part of it too. Um, Still, uh, I guess it depends on what advice he gets on if how high he'll be drafted, if so. But if he's not a first round pick, probably going to return to school, and will he return to Villanova? I don't know. It's still possible, but um, it's definitely interesting to see where he might end up, Cope.
Yeah, it's going to be somebody that's going to pay him a lot of money. It seems like
Which could be Villanova. Villanova's deep pockets, but I
they
don't know.
do, but the reports, Kyle, was that this was an offer that was in the millions of dollars, not the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And with him being at a school in the Big East where he was given the keys as a freshman, he played well. Again, the opportunity to run the offense, to have the ball in his hands a lot, have a big role, play through mistakes. And not only that, Kyle, because that comes with any young player. You even saw that with Bryce Lindsey being, a very young player, with Matt Hodge. But they got better as the year went on. But he struggled big time in games against good competition. He shot less than 60% from the free throw line. This is a guy that shot in the 20s percentage wise from the 3-point line. Like, he has plenty to work on himself. And it's really hard to understand like what the need would be, Kyle, to leave when you have all that opportunity to have the ball in your hands. You're entrusted from day one. You're able to show your ability off. You're going to have the opportunity to do it again, to show, put in a lot of work in the off season with shooting and stuff like that. Have a breakout sophomore season at a program where you're the starter. You're essentially the star, and you started on a tournament team, and they offered you in the millions. Like I don't know what else they're supposed to give you. I don't know what else you'd want in an opportunity. But again, like seems like there's two schools, these guys right here and these
Yeah.
guys right here that have a whole lot of money. I just did the Hook'em Horns and I did It's All About the You
Well,
for
this is a wolf pack. This
the
is the Hook'em
Canes.
Horns. You kind of did
Oh,
the
I'm
wolf
supposed
pack
to.
here. Yeah, you gotta hook them like this.
Okay.
Yeah,
Anyway,
fingers
uh
in, fingers in for that.
regardless, a power conference team with a lot of money.
Yeah,
Power conference team with a lot of money is he's going to chase a large offer here, which the reports of the millions with an S dollars offer he got from Villanova. I don't understand this guy. I'll be totally honest with you here. Um, Wish him all the best. Seems like a great dude. Obviously, supremely talented. He's going to put his name in the draft
I was about to say there's the draft element too, which is not
and see
nothing.
what happens. But I just think with opportunity and playing time and how much the ball is going to be in his hands and how much kind of freedom he has offensively to do his thing and show off the talent he has and still have room for growth for a big sophomore season. Opportunity wise, I don't really know how much more you could have asked for. So it's a confusing one to me. I wish him all the best. I wish him all the best with his pockets as well to go get paid, young man. But I'm failing to really see the logic with this one too much, Kyle. But that's okay because this is probably a money based decision, as a good chunk of these will be.
As most of these will be cope, and yeah, I'm also confused by it as I said, but I think I was reading an article. I don't know if it was from Jeff Nyberg or if it was somebody else in the Twitter world or the media world, but it seems like maybe the Villanova, staff and Kevin Willard maybe want to beef up a little bit, and I mean like literally beef up a little bit because they kind of had the smaller guard archetype with Caden Lewis with Bryce Lindsey. Maybe not so much in the same breath Devin Askew, but obviously he can't return. He's out of eligibility, but um, they weren't great defenders, either of them. I think that was a huge problem for them. Obviously, we saw the struggles of them guarding the three-point line, especially early in the season, which was, a big cause for concern. I think they righted it a little bit, but these are just guys who weren't quite as physical. I mean, at least on both ends of the floor. But if you want to look at their offensive archetypes, Lewis is, you know, the slasher, the shifty point guard who's a really good passer, um, but like to attack the basket and could get there based on, his shiftiness and explosiveness. And Bryce Lindsey, obviously, maybe not a three-point specialist, but a very good three-point shooter, and that's what his main offensive game was, shooting beyond the arc. You don't need to be overly physical to do either. In the case of Acaden Lewis, you need to be explosive, which I think is a different, obviously, skill set. But when you have those smaller guards, and you see it in all levels of basketball, but especially college basketball and the NBA, when you have guards who and even relatively it can be the same thing said about small forwards too, but when you have players who are that thin comparatively to the rest of the league or their conference, it's harder to defend that way. You have to rely on, and there's other things too. You can rely on your quickness, and especially in the case of Lewis, you can rely on effort and communication, which I think is probably 60% of defense. You know what I mean? Like it's a huge part of defense when you're talking about a team, but when you're talking about an individual defender, you do need to be able to be a little bit physical. And neither of those guys were overly physical. So I think I'm not saying they want either of them gone. I think if it was up to Kevin Willard, I mean, you said that Lewis got an offer in the millions from Villanova. I don't know exactly what Bryce Lindsey was offered, if he was offered to stay or if maybe he was offered to leave. I doubt it, but that's also probably something that they're going to address. If I had to guess, Cope, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but if I had to guess, if they're going to replace those guys, if those guys do not come back, they're probably going to get guards who are a little bit more capable of doing that in the Big East.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think not only is it defense, but how about just like you can go and get older guys too.
Yeah.
They played a freshman and a redshirt sophomore and Bryce Lindsey who comes up from the Sun Belt. No disrespect because he killed it there, but I think that's another thing too. Is like Villanova has the money, and if a Caden Lewis doesn't decide to come back, I mean that's a big loss, but that's also a ton of money you just freed up to go get yourself an older guy who's probably played in a bigger league. So, not only is it the stature, but it's the defensive ability as well. Like clearly that was something that was lacking that they can get better in. And, maybe they're not the shooters, the scorers, the passers that these two guys were, but perhaps you can get some better defensive guards and you can surround them with guys that can do that. So, not only I think size and defense and physicality is just going to kind of be like a theme here because I think they need to be bigger. And I think Hodge, and as Jeff outlined in his article, like, Hodge is great. I think Hodge would be a real weapon if he was a guy that played the three. And, you had 6'8" Matt Hodge, who's a 3-point sniper at the three, could surround him with a four who could potentially also shoot, but is bigger and that could rebound, who could play next to a five. Like, I think physicality certainly is a good point that you bring up, but defensively older, more experienced guys like I think that's going to be a certainly a point of emphasis for Villanova this year, and that's going to have to start at the guard spots because that's I mean they seemingly have holes everywhere with their six-man graduating and Duke Brennan now leaving, but the guards is a big hole as well. There's a whole lot of pieces to fill in the gaps here for Villanova that they're going to have to work on. But it's a good point you outlined. I think that's certainly a top of mind for them.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the national champion this year in Michigan, and number one, obviously the big topic is that they built their entire, main contributors, pretty much their entire team off of transfers. Not that that's going to happen every year. I mean, if you looked at the continuity stats in years prior, even in the transfer portal era, when you look back at Florida last year and UConn the previous 2 years, there was a good amount of continuity there. I think this is the first time where that wasn't the case, but it's obviously possible to build a team this way. And I think Villanova has, the pockets and the willingness to do it that way, but not necessarily 100% my point. My point is that you look at the players that they did bring in, Amorez Johnson, Ajaxo Lendenborg, Ademara. Obviously, he's not a huge guy, but he's 7'3", so you have to have, some weight on you to be able to play center for Michigan in the Big Ten. But Elliot Cadeau, who actually during this podcast is re-signed, he will be at Michigan for his senior year. The most outstanding player of the Final Four. But you look at some of those guys, like those are men. Those are, or for the most
Yeah,
part, at least. I mean, Morris Johnson's a little younger, but um, those are experienced players who have been in a college weight room for at least a couple of years. And even if you want to relate it to football too, that's how Kurt Cignetti built Indiana. He brought in men. He brought in
yep.
guys and from 21 to 23 who still had eligibility, who, maybe they were three-star recruits and the Alabamas of the world and, the Oklahomas and whoever of the world didn't recruit them out of high school necessarily, at least to be starters. Um, Kurt Cignetti brought them in, a lot of them from James Madison too. And I mean, they won the national championship. They were one of the maybe
Yeah.
not one of the most dominant teams ever, but they finished 16 and 0, 16 and 0, Cope. And they won a national championship with not really highly touted players. Again, I'm not saying that that's specifically with the talent and ratings coming out of high school is what Kevin Willard should pay attention to, and he will probably get guys like that who are former McDonald's All-Americans and things like that. But you got to get players like that who have been experienced and you know have been there before.
Yeah, and
It
and
matters.
people are playing big ball. Look at
Yeah,
Arizona. Look at Michigan.
Florida
You know,
last year,
Florida last year. Yeah, I
UConn
mean
previously.
that's it, people are playing big ball here, and I think Villanova sees that. And again, it's just you had to throw a team together. Whether got hired maybe a little late, but that's very strongly believe we are going to see that. This will be a way more veteran, way bigger, more physical team next year. Now,
100%.
we would be remiss if we didn't touch on Braden Pierce because he is taking a visit to St. Joe's
Yes.
tomorrow. And I mean, the Holy War didn't happen this year, but he would join Marvin O'Connor's the only two guys who have went from St. Joe's or Villanova to St. Joe's.
Would be pretty crazy.
Interesting little tidbit, but he probably doesn't even know what that is, to be honest with you. I mean,
No.
they didn't play the game. But I thought he would, just a quick point here. Like, I thought Pierce got better as the season went on. And, if they brought in, obviously would not campaign for him to be the starter. But if you brought in another starter like Duke Brennan, who played bulk of the minutes, like I thought Braden Pierce would be a fine backup center to have. But, going to have to totally revamp that position. Kyle, I hate to have to go back. We need to just touch something very, very briefly on St. Joe's.
Okay.
Before we get into Temple, we hit Penn, Drexel, and get on out of here. The big domino, of course, is Jaden Glover Toscano.
Yep.
That's the big domino. There's not been a decision yet.
Yep.
Are people going to offer more money than St. Joe's is? Probably. But reports are that St. Joe's is trying to rally the boosters here and trying to make as competitive an offer as they can to Glover to keep him there. And, if he were to come back, can he play in the Power Fives in the Big East? Sure. Absolutely. I mean, the talent is just incredible with him. And the shot making, there's not many guys, if any, in the A10 that can do what he does. But if he stays, Kyle, you bring back a guy who's going to be a shoo-in for a first-team All-A10. You're going to bring back one of the best players in the league, and you'll have a focal point on offense. I would love to see him come back. It would be a huge domino to fall. The thing is, it comes down to, Kyle, Steve Donahue and Joe Mihalik are going through this for the first time. Joe Mihalik Jr., they're going through this for the first time as Ivy League guys. Of course, as a GM and a head coach. So this is the first time that they've had to deal with paying guys this much. And this is the first time that they've had to deal with, like, all right, how much money do we have? We have this many roster holes we have to fill. We have 2 freshmen that are coming in next year. Can we keep Austin Williford, Kafik Myers, Owen Verna, Makai Johnson? Like, what can we pay those guys who are still have the option to return? How do we balance everything? Do we want to give this much money to him? I think it's worth it because the guy is that good and would be that good in this league. But the one thing I think we're waiting on with St. Joe's before they really start to get active here, Kyle, is what's going to happen with Jaden Glover Toscano. And until that domino falls, I think, that's what's going to hold up the rest of their offseason. I don't say that in a bad way as well, because that's a super important guy to bring back. And he really revived himself last year, showing how good he'd be. But we can't not go do this episode, Kyle, and not at least touch on that.
Of course. And obviously, like, because he didn't make a decision yet, I didn't want to say anything which way or another, but it's a good point to bring up. I mean, why would you want to put your attention elsewhere when you are actively trying to bring back your own all league player? Obviously, that's the priority for St. Joe's, and um, I I hope they get him. Obviously, we both do, and St. Joe's fans alike hope they can retain him. He's a perfect player for the league, Cope. Maybe he's a little bit too good for the league, selfishly. He obviously, he was an all league player last year and um, will be again if he returns, but hopefully not for a different team, of course. But um, it would be huge. It would be absolutely huge. And
Absolutely.
there's no I don't even think there's no overstating of that of how huge that would be. All right, Cope, Temple, Penn, Drexel. Um, let's go through these a little quickly because we are up against it a little bit. But Penn, we can go over a little bit. No disrespect to any of these guys, but Michelangelo Berti, Christian Nobochi, Alex Massung didn't really play a whole lot. I'm looking at our friend intern so kindly put all their, minutes, points per game, rebounds a game, assists per game. Total minutes this past year. I'm not great at math, but let's see, that's 100, that's 8 plus 9. It's 117 minutes total. Um,
Yeah, well, I do have to. It's only 108. I have to hate to have to correct
I
our
told
guy
you I'm
here.
not good at math.
No,
I'm
no,
not good at
Christian
math.
Abochi didn't play this year. He's not on a roster.
Okay, well there you go.
So, but you could throw Braden Foster in there, who really only played in like the Rowan game.
Yeah,
You could throw
that's another
Braden
one too.
Foster in there as well. And not to cut you off, but I think I can wrap up the Penn section here pretty quickly and try to help us get out of here. Point
Freshmen.
being is
They're gonna get a lot of freshmen in. That's the
there's
bottom
6
line.
freshmen, and they did bring in some transfers last year as well. I have to imagine Penn would at least give the transfer portal a look with how successful they were bringing in TJ Power and how good Lucas Luth was at the end of the season. They have a ton of guys who still can return. Who knows if we're done yet in the transfer portal with Penn? But this is only a roster that's going to be one less person than it was last year if this stays the way it is.
Yeah.
Because you have Johnny Walter, Dylan Williams, Cam Thrower, Ethan Roberts, who have to leave with the IB eligibility rule. And then, guys like Michelangelo Birdie, Alex Masung, and then Braden Foster, like, are just kind of casualties where it's like, they've now spent 2 full seasons at Penn. They're Donahue recruits. They couldn't crack the rotation. This could be even an even bigger roster next year. Like, they're just kind of roster crunch casualties here, unfortunately. So, you know what? Good luck to these guys. Good luck and go play somewhere.
Yeah.
Go play somewhere.
Yeah. Cope. There was one name I would like to see Penn get a look at. I don't know. Well, he might not go down quite that far, but I don't remember exactly how to say his name, but you would know. The Duke player, the white guy who enters his name in the transfer portal, freshman.
Oh, Nicholas Hamenya.
Yes. Homenya entered the transfer portal. Listen, it's happened before where an ACC player transferred to Penn.
Yeah, no, it's
Academically, it
happened.
would work.
It worked. You know, um,
That
it's
would
just
be
he kind of got squeezed out, I think, too. Not that the coaching staff didn't want him back. It's just like that's the problem with Duke is like
their Duke.
the class behind you is so loaded that like if you don't play year one and you look over your shoulder, it's like, well, I
Someone's
don't
coming in.
need it.
Yeah,
Someone's coming in to take my
that
spot.
could be fun. We don't spend a lot of time on that, but that I don't know if Penn's even looking at him. I don't know if he's looking at Penn, but if we're following the TJ
I'd
Power
be for it.
pipeline
Yeah.
of former, 4-star or 5-star recruit to go from the ACC to the Ivy League, could play. Um, all right, so that's Penn. We'll go to Temple now. Really, Aiden Tobiason, I think, is the one here. Cope. Baba had an up and down year. Was in foul trouble a lot. He was also one of the only ones that returned last year with Aiden Tobiason, so kind of stinks to see him in the portal, but you know, I can't say I'm the most surprised, but Tobiason, I think, is one that, you know, that kind of surprised me a little bit. But he was that good last year where I get it.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to have offers. Man, his development was so much fun to watch this year. And it's just a shame that Temple could not sustain the success they had early in the season and early in conference play. Because I would have really liked to see him, play deep into the conference tournament potentially. But, he is so talented and he got so much better from his freshman to his sophomore year. And, the defense is great and his length and his athleticism and his activity, his ability to score the ball. There's so much to like about him. It's just really unfortunate, Kyle, that this is probably a money decision that Temple just doesn't have for one reason or another, and it's very frustrating that they don't, because I think that this is obviously a program that has been good, but just with everything that historically they have going for them, they're in a big city in a basketball rich area. I think there's so many things that can allow the school to be successful. It's just not that way right now, Kyle. It's just not that way. The money thing hurts, and they were lucky. I mean, Kyle, to return Baba and Aiden, the two starters they brought back were like among the most in the conference last year because it's just a revolving door here in the American. But unfortunately, Temple will be part of that revolving door this year because there's not too much left. It's not too much left. I mean, they're going to lose 2 starters and 3 rotation guys, and then throw Mokita's name in there as well to graduation. I mean, Connor Gale put his name in, Felt put his name in. Spencer Mahoney didn't play, but it's going to be another year, Kyle, where when we have a Spacers or we break down this roster, there's going to be another
Brand
probably
new.
9, 10 new faces we're going to have to talk about.
Gonna be brand new.
But this is probably a money decision. And for a local guy like Aiden, I would have loved to see him stick it out, but it's a money decision, Kyle. And I think that with 2 years left, if you want to try your hand at going elsewhere and seeing what's out there for you, there's certainly going to be a payday. And this guy's really talented. I'll be rooting for him wherever he's at his next stop. But it's a lot of scoring out the door, Kyle, with
Yeah.
Darian Ford and Jordan Mason and now Aiden, not to mention just with the size. Like, there's no Baba, there's no Felt, who made 23 starts and really had to be the buffer for Baba to not foul out and just to help him get into the game a little bit. And then with Mokita, like this is This is another team that's going to have to revamp their front line, which I think is a giant priority for them.
Yes.
I think, obviously you need guards and you need to replace scoring and defense with Aiden Tobiason. But I mean, man, Kyle, like this is a team that is not rebounded particularly well under Adam Fisher. I think they need a they were good on defense blocking the ball this year, but the first 2 years he was there, it was not like that. I just think like defensive end here, I'd like to see them get an anchor. I'd like to see them get a defensive anchor, and really, it's going to be hard because again, it's money, Kyle, and I mean some of the asking prices and some of the numbers you see and the reported numbers on these guys are absolutely insane. You know, um, but I think big man, they're going to have to totally revamp the position. I think that's got to be certainly a priority for them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Cope, we'll go quickly here on Drexel because we are up against it a little bit, and then we'll wrap up, let you guys go. But obviously the two big ones here, Shane Blakeney and Kevon Vanderhorst. Um, yeah, it's tough losses. I mean, those are two guys you would definitely want to contribute again this year. They were huge contributors last year, especially Blakeney averaging 14 a game, being guarding your best player every night. Um, he was a key cog, and we had him on obviously last offseason. He's a great kid and a great player too in the CAA. Be interested to see where he goes. I'm not sure exactly the level. If he'll go, have how much higher of a level he'll go. I mean, I'm
I saw a
assuming
report of Ohio State.
would be cool. But you know what?
Yeah,
That's part of the player development program they have there at Drexel. You
yeah.
saw it last year with the four guys who went high major. We're probably gonna have at least one more of this crop. I don't know where Kevon will end up either, but uh, I guess this is the valley of the beast when you're in the CAA. This it's just what it is.
It's another league that's going to
Just
be a
ravaged
giant.
every year.
It's going to be a high turnover rate. You already saw Preston Edmeade put his name in at Hofstra. It wouldn't surprise me to see Cruz Davis put his name in there as well. But yeah, for Shane Blakeney, Kyle, like he redshirted his first year, played 3 years there, got better every year. The role increased every year. That player development program, I mean, he is one of the poster childs for it. He put his
Player
time in.
enhancement program. I was trying to remember what the middle initial of the acronym was. PEP,
Yeah,
player
Pep.
enhancement program. But
He
regardless,
he put his time in. He is a phenomenal dude. But he put his time in. I'll be rooting for him wherever he deserves one last shot, one last year. Let me go for it, get paid, and see what I can do at the next level. But it's a crusher because he was not only Drexel's leading scorer, but he's chasing around the other team's leading scorer as well. And was one of the best defensive players in this conference.
yep.
Your culture driver, culture curator, as Zach Spiker would say, is gone. Probably your best player on both ends of the floor is gone. Your most veteran player is gone. Um, it's tough, but it's the way of the road here. And with William Garcia Adston leaving and Kevon Vanderhorst leaving, and then you look at I don't know if Victor Panoff can get a waiver back from playing JUCO ball at Daytona State, but you look at who's leaving: Victor Panoff potentially, Garfield Turner, Eli Beard, Kevon Vanderhorst, Shane Blakeney, and William Garcia Adston. That's 6 rotation guys are going to leave. It's regardless, of if Vic can come back or what the deal is. Like this is going to be a brand new team next year. Whether that's supplemented with transfers or, they're bringing in 3 freshmen and they just kind of rely on some guys they have to see if they can retain, a Josh
I was
Reed.
just gonna say,
I
yeah,
was excited for Clement and Runyon this year, but he got hurt playing overseas and with FIBA.
Moses
It'll
Hips.
be interesting to see. Yeah, we didn't get to see Moses Hips, who I think could have really, really helped in the scoring department for a team that really struggled like Drexel did. So this is a program that Kyle, they don't rely on transfers, they rely on internal development. What that looks like next year, I don't know, because that's a lot of guys to have to lose in the rotation. So a major TBD here on the Dragons.
Indeed. And that's all we have for this one. Cope, any quick final thoughts before we sign out of here and
Yes,
we'll come back
one
next week?
one thing that we were totally remiss about to not mention. I'm going to clap it up for Tyler Perkins coming back to Villanova.
Yes,
Good
of
man,
course.
good man. He's
Matt
going to be
Hodge
a
as well is coming
senior.
back, obviously, too, but he's not going to play probably most of the year.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. A speedy recovery for him as well, whether he comes back this year or next year. But hey, I want to clap it up for Tyler Perkins, sticking it out for his not only his senior season but his third year at Villanova. Obviously a really good player, the most improved player in the Big East this year. Super, super happy for him. Great dude, great character. Is going to be big time for Nova next year. So
Absolutely.
salute to you, Mr. Perkins.
No matter who they bring in, he's going to be a key contributor, and we know that. And we will do Big Five awards next time. Just didn't have enough time to squeeze us in on a big transfer portal and coaching news episode. We had a lot to catch up on, so we'll do that next time, which will be very fun. But thank you all for tuning in. As always, you guys know where to find us. I'm not doing the spiel again. You can go watch the end of our last episode if you want the spiel again, but at Big Five Pod pretty much everywhere. But thank you all for tuning in. Very much appreciate you. We'll probably be back sometime next week with another transfer portal update because this does not stop, and neither do we. So thanks all for tuning in. We'll see you next time.